Okay, Rupert, David Letterman hasn't been on CBS for years, yet his merchandise is still killing it. The only place that you can get official Letterman, Late Show with David Letterman merchandise is right here at the Hello Deli. How do people get this merchandise other than coming in here? Obviously, you want to come in here. If you're in New York,
right,
come to the Ed Sullivan Theater, come to the Hello Deli, get yourself a Paul Schaefer sandwich or something else, and then buy some merchandise. If people can't make it to New York, what's the best way to get some of this merchandise?
Well, they can get on my website, hello-deli.com.
Yep.
And order it there.
Now, do you pack that yourself? Do you pack it, this merchandise, and send it off to people yourself?
I do.
Okay.
Yep.
If people ask you to add onions to the order, will you add onions to the order?
Absolutely.
That sounds great. The Hello Deli is the sponsor of the Letterman Podcast. We are so grateful for that, Rupert. We're so grateful for you. And
my pleasure.
On a personal note, thank you for the years and years and years of entertainment that you have brought. Not just America, I'm Canadian, but brought the world. Thank you very, very much.
My pleasure. Thank you for watching.
Absolutely.
La, la, la.
Welcome once again to the Letterman Podcast. My name is Mike Chisholm. I am very, very excited about today's episode because I love, there she is right there. I gotta say that it took me a little while. I worked on her for a little bit, but finally, Nadine Hennelly is going to be on the Letterman Podcast. I could not be more excited. Here's a gal, just if we go through it, over 400 appearances on Late Show and a couple on Late Night, actually. We're going to talk about that in a second. Appeared on segments from everything from the CBS Mailbag, King of Meats, The Psychic Sandwich, Will It Float, What's on the Photocopier, Beat the Clock, and much, much, much more. Nadine was, and now we're in 2023. Am I even allowed to say hi-ho girls anymore? I don't know. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that or not, but we're going to say it for today. Nadine was one of the hi-ho girls, has been around and part of some legendary segments on Late Show with David Letterman, appeared with Steve Martin, Bruce Willis, Calvert DeForest many times. A very memorable appearance that Richard Simmons had on the show, Tony Randall, and much more. One of the hi-ho babes herself. She wasn't sure how this was all going to go. We're going to start, Nadine. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Fellow Canadian, by the way. I think you're the first Canadian guest. I've got to check the tape, but I think you're the first
didn't
Canadian.
have Paul?
Not yet. From your lips to God's ears, Nadine. We're gonna get Paul on here soon.
Yeah, you have to have Paul. He's like the ultimate Canadian from the show. So you gotta. And Paul is so sweet and wonderful. He's just the loveliest person. So I think you'd really, really get a kick out of it. And he's funny, and I can't imagine. I think he'd just be an amazing guest.
So I don't know if you can see that one right there.
Oh my God, that was such a fun segment. And as a little footnote, which I hope I'm allowed to say now.
You can say anything you want.
Okay, well, at the time that we were doing that, during rehearsal, I was going to say, because, if I could always get a little, a little bon mot or whatever, and do some say something about Canada, So when we were doing that, doing rehearsals, Dave would say to me, because I was pretending to be an audience member. So Dave would, said to me, "Okay, Nadine, well, where are you from?" And I said, "I'm from Canada. I'm from Montreal." I was so excited to say that, even though I lived in New York City. And right before the show, the writers decided that I couldn't say I was Canadian and that I was from Montreal, because they felt that it would dilute the joke a little bit, because they were worried that maybe because Paul was Canadian and I was Canadian, that was the reason that I wanted to kiss him instead of Dave. Isn't that funny? So
it's
I had
sound
to
logic.
say that.
I mean, come on. I mean, the Canadians versus, it's sound logic to me. Those writers knew what they were talking about. I love that bit. And for the bit
Isn't
was
that cool?
that you got up and you always wanted to kiss a big time TV celebrity. And Dave's all excited and everything. And yeah, you said you were an art student from New York, I think is what you said. You were a sculptor.
I was a sculptor. I was a sculptor. Well, which it was actually partially true, because I was doing sculpture, and I actually exhibited a lot of my sculptures at the Alexandre Follin Gallery in Chelsea. So it wasn't a lie, because the writers told me that it's always best to try to keep it as close to the truth as possible, because Dave, when we're live, might, like ask you, if you say, "Oh, I'm from Boise, Idaho," he'll
Yep.
go, "Oh, really? Boise, Idaho? How about the theater there?" And he'll catch you. So you had to be careful to try to make it as close to the truth as possible, so that, you wouldn't get caught in a fub, you know what I mean? Which
Totally.
actually is kind of funny when you do get caught, because then, like the audience doesn't necessarily know, but everybody, all the insiders do. So everybody's just in stitches. And
Yep.
I don't know if you saw the rest of that segment, but what's his name? Oh my God, it's been so long. He comes on after me, and he wasn't reading his cue properly. And he was like, "Can I get some of that?" Or I can't remember what he said.
It
But
was
we
Pete
were
Fatovich.
crying. That's it, Pete Favovich.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh, and
It
Don
was
just told me that it's
so
Pete
funny.
Fatovich too. Yeah.
And I was crying. I was in the audience. I couldn't stop laughing. I was laughing so hard, because he couldn't remember what he was supposed to say, because he got nervous. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it was just hilarious. Oh my God, it's so funny. But that was just such a cute segment. And then Pete had to come on the next night and say the segment, just his part again, until he got it right. So it was very funny. It was very funny. So a lot of the show had a lot, because everybody there was just so, I miss it so much, because especially, in the last few years that I was doing the show, because
Yeah.
I was there every week, and we were on a lot of times, if we got bumped from the show because a guest interview went too long or whatever, we were still there, Andrea and I, we were just like sitting around waiting, or we'd be in the green room or whatever. But I have to say, I just, everybody there was lovely. There's so many nice people, and you got a real sense of family from being
Yeah.
there, and I just loved it. I loved being there. I loved working with everyone. And, like we would all have a good time laughing about like the different, because Dave would often showcase a lot of the staff in segments and stuff like
Yes.
that. And they're not professional actors. And so, sometimes they would do things, and, they would forget their lines, or they didn't do and it was just hilarious.
Yep.
And everybody was a good sport about it too. But then, everybody would definitely poke fun at you afterwards. So it was very cute.
It
It was
was.
very cute.
That's one of the reasons why we do this show here, is because that family has endured, and that cast of characters. There's an entire audience out there who, when Dave and company broke that fourth wall, and we're all sitting there, we felt like we were a part of it, because the behind the scenes folks, the production people, all of that, were all, you could tell that there was a family there. And that's the whole reason why we do this show. And I think that's why it's resonating with so many people. That's why I'm very, very excited to have you here. Now, I want to talk about what got you
Thank
on.
you.
Oh, this is a thrill for me. It's a huge thrill for me to talk to you about this. Now, your very first
You're so
appearance,
nice.
and we'll get to that in a second, was actually before the show moved over
Yeah.
to CBS. You actually had a couple appearances on the 30 Rock show on late night. I want to know what brought you from Montreal to New York. I want to know how this came to be, which turned into a relationship where, like, you had more screen time with Dave and more actual time with Dave than many of the people who worked for him for a decade or two. Like, you actually got a chance to be on stage over 400 times. Amazing. But I want to know how that run started. What brought you to how did the sights of late night get set on you?
Well, I had left Montreal quite young. I moved to Paris, and then I went to New York, and I had a very successful career as a model.
Yeah.
So there's a magazine called Elle magazine,
Yes.
and Elle launched in the US. And I was part of, with Gilles Ben-Simon, who was a photographer at the time. I was part of the original Elle girls that got in that magazine. So, and it happened to be the most successful launch of a magazine in the US. So,
How old were you, and what year would this have been?
God, I think that was probably 1986 and 1987, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
You know, I just did very well as a model. So I worked for Vogue magazine, I worked for Elle, Harper's Bazaar, Cosmo, you know, like all the major fashion publications essentially. And I had a very successful career as a fashion model. And from there, my agent was constantly trying to get me to move into acting, you know,
Yep.
which I wasn't 100% sure that that was something I really wanted to do. But, and also because my modeling career was still going so well that, you know, I didn't necessarily want to stop doing that. But
Right.
I wound up doing a skit on Saturday Night Live with John Levitt and I think, oh my God, I can't believe I'm blanking
That's
on
my
his name.
cast. Describe who they are, and I'll, you know, Dana Carvey, Phil Hartman.
The hockey player. No,
The hockey. Oh, Wayne Gretzky.
Yes, Wayne Gretzky. I can't believe I forgot that. I should
The
have my
Hawaiian. Is that the
Canadian
Hawaiian
passport
Kentucky bar?
rescinded. Well, yeah. Well, Wayne Gretzky did because John Lovitz used to do a popular segment called "Get to Know Me,"
Yeah.
and they had myself and another girl named Jill Goodacre, who's lovely. She married Harry Connick Jr. And we did that segment together at NBC. And I guess I became known to the people at NBC from that segment. And from there, they called my agent maybe, I don't know, a month or so later. And at the time, it was a little challenging for me because I used to travel so much from modeling, you know?
Yep.
And they said, listen, would you be interested and up for it? Because they seemed, I guess they felt like I was a good sport from when I did the Saturday Night Live skit. And I said, they said, would you be interested in doing something for the Late Show? I said, oh, for sure. You know, I'd love to. I mean, I'd really enjoy that, whatever. So they had me come in. I met with the producers and everyone. I met Dave.
Morty, probably.
And it went, and it went very, very well. And they said, okay, so, you know, here's the thing, you know, we're going to just throw things at you and just be natural. And, you know, and I was like, oh, all right, fine. You know, like I was a good sport. And so the first thing that we did, that I was like, so
high-powered pressurized coffee on your back right there, Nadine.
Yeah, I had like the 2 tanks behind me that I had to strap on, and I had a little hose, you know, to be able to fill up Dave's cup with coffee. So when we were doing rehearsal, they were like, okay, we just have to check and make sure that the gas is all right. And, you know, all you have to do, Nadine, is you just have to come out. And when Dave says, you know, fill up his cup, you have to just, you know, shoot press the gauge and fill up his cup with coffee. I said, okay. And so they were like, oh, we just need to make sure it's working properly. And I was like, perfect. So during rehearsal, of course, they fixed it so that it was very gentle. You know, I would go like this and a little bit of coffee would come out and I could be like, sort of like an airline hostess or something, you know, like just very delicate and dainty and do the whole thing. And I was like, okay, perfect. Then we went live. And what they did without telling me is they changed the setting so that when I would, you know, squirt the coffee out, it would like shoot out like, you know, with like much more force, you know. So I had no idea that that was going to happen. So here I go up to Dave and shoot the coffee in his cup. and it just came out like a big, like, just like shot out. And I was like, I was taken aback, and he was like, whoa, so it was just silly.
Yep.
And it was just a lot of fun. So, and I guess they thought I was okay with, rolling with the punches like that. I was fine. I didn't get uptight. I didn't freak out. I just kind of just went with it, and so from there they just kept calling me, and I think the next one I did, but you guys would know better than me because it's been a while. I think the next one that I did, we went to Dave's favorite restaurant, and some Italian restaurant that the crew would go to a lot, and I had to just scream. That's it. Yeah, I had to scream.
So, by the way, this this is all Don. Just so you know, he prepped me with these pictures, and we didn't do a pre-interview, as you know. And how cool is that?
Can we just acknowledge Don, because he's amazing. He's so incredible. He's just such a wonderful person, and he's so bright, and he knows everything about the show. And, you couldn't ask for, he did all of that just because he's passionate about the show and he's a huge fan. But could anyone ever ask for a better fan in life than him? Nope. He cares so much about the show, and he knows everything there is about the show. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that Don had all of the Late Show on tape, like every single segment, and that I think it was either CBS or somebody even asked him, like, whenever they'd need segments from the Late Show, they would go to him because he had them from before everything was digitized,
You are making me smile ear to ear right now, because there aren't very many humans who can get away with complimenting Don Giller. You are one of those humans who can do that. By the way, I just got to say this to the audience. It's funny how every once in a while, when I let kind of the circle know who a guest is going to be, it's funny how that circle sometimes reacts, like guys like the FU guy or Gerard Mulligan. Okay, Mike, you go get him. Well, I tell people Nadine Hennelly is coming on the show, and all sorts of people want to help. They want to help with this show. It's funny how
that's so nice.
Shout out to David Yoder, by the way, who also helped out with this, and all the other people who volunteered when they found out that Nadine was going to be on the show. It's funny how biology works.
That's so nice. That's very, I'm touched. And I feel the same about everyone, because really, it was just such an honor and such a privilege, like what a cool job to have in life. It was just extraordinary. And
so the late night thing happens. You have a couple more appearances on late night, and then in entertainment, there was no bigger story than that summer of '93, like with Dave moving over. Yeah. You had done a couple appearances on late night. Did you have any indication, or did your agent have any indication that they would be continuing that relationship, or was it a surprise when Dave moved over to the Ed Sullivan Theater that that more work started coming?
Well, actually, because I have to tell you, Dave is, outside of the fact that he's so gifted, and he's probably the smartest person I have ever met in my entire life. That man is brilliant, and he's so whip smart, and he's razor sharp, and he's so quick, like people say things and he just, his mind is just always on. I don't even know how he could fall asleep at night, quite honestly, because I'm sure his mind is just racing at all times about everything, and he's interested in everything. There's no subject that Dave is not interested in learning about or knowing about, or, he's just incredible. And also the staff that he had working for him are outstanding, very, very bright people. So it was just like synchronicity to have so many brilliant people all together working towards a common goal, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that happens a lot in other shows, but I certainly the most successful ones, that has to be part of the formula,
Yeah.
because that's definitely the vibe that I got from the show. But when Dave, at the time, actually, where the question was, everybody knew that Dave was going to jump ship to CBS.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, that was kind of common knowledge. And the only thing that was a question was everyone thought he was going to go to LA.
Yeah.
Because that seemed like the better, because sometimes when he was at NBC, from what I understood, sometimes some of the celebrities would not be available because they didn't want to come to New York,
Yep.
Not because they didn't like New York, but maybe they had a very tight schedule and, they were shooting whatever, and it was just easier for them to do it in LA.
Mm-hmm.
So for a moment, Dave was contemplating a move to Los Angeles. And, he's such a sweetheart, Dave. Do you know that he called me at home and he was like, Nadine, I don't know if you've heard that I'm going to be, moving to CBS, because Dave's so down to earth and humble. And, I was like, of course I heard, everybody's talking
Everybody
about
heard.
it. Yeah.
Yep.
And he was just like, he said, well, I just wanted to know, I'm not sure, we're going to go to LA or if we're going to stay in New York. And I said, oh, I sure hope you stay in New York, and he goes, oh, so that you don't think you'd ever be in LA? I said, no. I don't know how to drive, because at the time I didn't know how to drive a car. And he said, yeah, well, I like LA, it's beautiful, but I love New York City too. And I think a lot of the show, but if we stay in New York, would you consider continuing to make appearances on the show? I couldn't even believe he asked me that.
Dave himself asked you that. That's pretty special.
I was like, Dave, count on me. Anytime you need me, I will totally be there. What an honor and a pleasure. And I just love working for you so much. Absolutely. And I hope you guys stay in New York, And he said, yeah, I think that's the intention too. I think that's going to be the better way to go than LA. He goes, LA just be easier for some parts of the show, but New York
it was a New York show.
Like,
don't you think?
Yeah.
It was very much a
Oh
New
my
York
God.
show. I
Could you imagine September 11 without Dave?
Well, there you
Never.
go. There you go.
Okay.
And I've got that in my notes to ask you about as well, because I mean that was still right during your heyday, when that happened, for sure. But I want to go back to early on, so you get this call from Dave, you kind of know what's happening. That's a very special thing right there, by the way. Just Dave himself,
so nice.
kind of letting you
so
know.
Nice. I mean, he was always just so. He was always so kind and nice to me and polite to me. He just, and I have a son who's 18 now, but at the time after I left the show, because I had a kid, I would come back with my son, and Dave would always need him and, make time for us. And I wasn't there anymore. I was living in Canada, and he still would always, make time to see and they were still doing the show full time. And he'd met my son and he'd have a meeting with us and wanted to genuinely know how we were doing and what's going on. I mean, he's such a nice person. He was so good to me and so nice to me that, it's just, I'm touched that, and not just him, as I said, everybody at the show was just lovely to me. I have nothing but the just fondest memories, but Dave especially, I mean, he was like a big superstar, and he was just always the most down to earth person ever.
I love hearing this. We've gotten so many, both on the record and off the record. I've gotten so many tales of Dave's kindness and his thoughtfulness, as well. A lot of people have talked about that. I love, and the staff too. Again, that emulates down to the staff as well. I think part of the reason that I'm having so much fun exploring some of these issues and getting to know some of these people, getting to know the people is by far my favorite part. I mean, they're
Huh,
great,
yeah.
great people. I've gotten to know so many of the writers and some of the producers and people behind stage, and like these real bonds and these real relationships are developing, which, as you can imagine, is really sweet for me. Before we get going to the next place here, because I want to start talking about this, you were part of some amazing moments early on. The moment with Alec Baldwin was hilarious. I mean, you were part
Oh,
of.
you have that? I haven't seen that in so long. That was so funny.
Oh, it's
I
out
think
there.
did we have like a tiger on that one too? I think no,
I
maybe
don't know if
that
there
was
was
a
a tiger
segment.
in that one in
We had a baby
particular, but
tiger. I know. No, because sometimes we would do more than one segment. Like we would,
yeah,
because that was pre-tape. We didn't do that with the live audience with
yeah,
Alec. But he was so fun too. I have to say, that's one thing that was extraordinary about being able to do the show is that I got to meet so many celebrities,
yeah,
and so many people. And everybody was just very, very nice and very down to earth. I mean, okay, there was sometimes like maybe I could count on one hand a couple of celebrities that were just unapproachable, let's say. I don't want to say
sure,
not nice, but
sure,
you know, doing a different vibe. But that happened so rarely that for the most part everybody was just really very kind and lovely and easy to work with. And everybody, what I found the most impressive about, because sometimes it's a live show and there's a lot on the line, so
yep,
the people that work there sometimes it was intense, like there's stress, like if a guest canceled at the last minute, or so of course there was that energy going around sometimes too, but I have to say what always struck me, um as being able to be there so much, is how devoted everybody that worked at the show was to
yeah,
Dave.
yep,
I mean, 100% devotion.
yep,
Like everybody there felt like they just wanted to give 150% and make Dave happy.
yep,
Like it was incredible to me that everybody was so invested with the same kind of desire
yeah,
that everyone wanted to make him happy and make the show the best that it could be.
yeah.
And that's pretty special, and I'm talking everybody from the grips to, like, because I talked with everybody. I loved everyone that worked there. And, like all the various ranks that you could go through, everybody had that same desire to just work hard and make it the best. So that I think that was a very nice thing for me to see in life, that people could be, everybody could come together and everybody had that same common goal.
There's no feeling like
It's nice.
collaboration. Collaboration is such a and when you do achieve something through collaboration, there's no feeling like it. You've touched on a few things that I naturally want to go to anyway. This is great, but Jason Zinneman, who wrote one of the books on David Letterman, was on last week, and we
So
talked about this a little bit. We talked about the devotion that you're talking about, that the staff felt, but also Dave's enthusiasts, the people who love Dave, also have that kind of it's almost a cult-like following is really what
yeah,
it is. And I think it is because everybody feels like they're a part of something. They're a part of
yeah,
the team. And Dave, and company, whether they intended to or not, they included the audience with that as well. Things like the mailbag segments or some of the New York random appearances. I mean, how many random people ended up in a segment with you in Rupert's Deli? They didn't
yeah.
start their day thinking that's what was going to happen, but it did. And I think that spirit basically made everybody who wanted to feel like they were a part of it as well. And I think that's some of
It
the
was
magic
very
and
New
some of the
York.
secret sauce. What's that?
You know, it was very New York. I
Very.
think the Late Show,
Yep.
you know, it just felt like New York. It just, I was blessed to live in New York for 20 some odd years. And, you know, the Late Show just had that New York City vibe, you know, it just had that energy that, like, you know, because New York City, it's a city of unlimited possibilities, right?
Yes.
Anything can happen there.
Yep.
You know, like, and I think that Dave brought that kind of crazy energy, that raw, real, authentic energy into the show. And, you know, I think that, you know, like Dave became forever imprinted with New York City.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that was like a perfect marriage of two forces, you know, like, because David's very spontaneous and electric. He's very New York at the end of the day, if you think about it, right? He's brilliant, and he's like unlike anyone else, you know, like there's no other talk show host that could, I don't think, ever. I mean, Dave just was unique. He was special. You know, there's something about him that nobody else could emulate, imitate. You know, he's just original. And New York City's kind of like that.
I could not agree more. And I love how you just gave us a bit of a love letter to New York. And I want to ask you about your life in New York, because as Canadians, I you know, people, whenever I would go, I spent a lot of my time in Vancouver as a youth, and
Beautiful
I love
place.
Vancouver.
Are you still there now, or
I'm in Kelowna. I'm born and raised in Kelowna, so it's a 3-hour drive to Vancouver. So I would always go there to see bands and things like that. But and to me, in many ways, New York is like a gigantic Vancouver, like gigantic version of it. But the thing is, from my first time going to New York and coming back and trying to describe that to my friends who had maybe lived in Toronto or Montreal or New York, whatever, New York is so special. It's alive. That's what I would say. The city is alive. Like it has an energy to it. You can feel it. In many respects, the highs, the lows, all the different things that can happen in New York, you feel it because the city is alive. It's a special place. And I think that fish out of water, the Midwestern sensibility of Dave, combined with that coolness, it's almost a little bit of a fish out of water kind of a thing. But at the same time, nobody was cooler at the time. He was just the coolest guy in the world. Now, that being said, I want to ask you about, like, you start, and I think I would safe to say, because you had been successful in modeling, you didn't get as starstruck the way that some people might. Is that a fair assertion? Because you had already had a level of success and certain life events, things like that. Going to the Late Show.
It wasn't. Well, I had, you know, because I had a lot of success quite young. And, you know, when you're a model, especially if you're a high fashion model and you're appearing in all the best magazines in the world and in New York City, if you manage to be doing, you know, I did a lot of European stuff too, but I mean, if you were doing American magazines, you were really at the top of your game, right? So I just got to meet a lot of people, let's just say that. I mean, like, you know, because you, as a model, you just get invited to everything. And when you're shooting, all these celebrities come because, like, the photographers that you're working with, a lot of times they're in a studio situation, and maybe tomorrow they're going to be shooting Leonardo DiCaprio or Johnny Depp or whoever, you know. So oftentimes those guys would come while you're shooting, and they would meet you and say, you know, like, shoot the breeze, whatever. So you know, and then you'd see them at agency parties or launches for different things. So you know, you were just already in that kind of circle, you know, where you're going out all the time and just meeting, you know, people who were, you know, immersed in popular culture.
So that's a huge advantage to you when moments like that happen.
What's that?
Well, that's you and Alec Baldwin, and Alec Baldwin is showing off his very impressive you know, chest of hair that he has in that shot. Like, I mean, you have moments like that. And I mean, clearly, being at these parties, being at these events, running in these circles, prepare you so you could just be a game day player when it comes to that. It looks
Yeah.
like you had a lot of fun doing this.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it because I never took myself seriously, like I always enjoyed in my life just having a good time, and
Yep.
no matter what I was doing, I never thought of myself as better than anybody or anything else. So I always was a very down to earth, grounded person.
Yes.
And I just never developed an attitude. I never had an attitude problem or anything else. And I guess when I did the show, I just thought it was fun. I got a kick out of it. And it was a nice break from it was so different than the kind of work I usually did. Because in modeling, you go on these location shoots, you shot in a studio, and you just all day long stare at a camera. People are doing your hair and makeup, and it's not as interactive as when you got to do the show. And plus the show was just a hoot. It was just so much fun. It was just like,
we're going to segue really quick to, I'm going to make the point that you just talked about yourself. By the way, so many people have sang your praises to me, and talked about how kind you are and how down to earth you are, and all of these things. Like, so many people. One of the people is the only sponsor of the Letterman podcast. Rupert has had Rupert and his Greek femme fatale gal pal Irene Hoffman have said nothing but amazing things about you.
Beautiful couple.
The Hello Deli, hello-deli.com, the only place where you can still get official Late Show with David Letterman merchandise. Go to hello-deli.com. One of the people who said such nice things about you was Rupert. Talk a little bit about, how much time did you spend in that deli, downtime between shots, waiting for, you guys are going to be part of the last shot of the show. Okay, you're waiting and waiting. Like, how much time did you spend in that friggin' deli?
First of all, it needs to be said that Rupert is comedy gold. Okay, like on camera, that guy is perfect. He's perfect because he was never starstruck by Dave or doing anything. It never got to his head, and he was just like a regular guy. And he never lost that quality. No. But also, Rupert, I couldn't wait. Whenever I knew that we were doing a segment at the deli, I loved it. Because I think, did we used to do Know Your Cuts of Meat? I think.
Sure did, yeah.
Right? And then actually Rupert and I, we did a segment once called, a spoof called Sex Club Sandwich or something. Did you see that one? Oh, hilarious.
I've seen it, but I didn't prepare for it today. Although Don's already
remember what it was called. I think it was called Sex Club Sandwich, something like that, something silly. And Rupert, I couldn't wait. I would always try to get there early or whatever, because he became, that's so funny.
That's it right there. Yep, that's the one.
That's too funny.
Don had set me up for that one already. Yep.
So, he was just a delight. And I used to have some of the best conversations with him. So I became friends with Rupert, actually, because he's just the most caring, the nicest person. And, very smart man. And we would have like great conversations. And he's just lovely. Lovely. He deserves all that success that he got, because it couldn't happen to a better person.
I could not agree more. And he feels the exact same way about you. And I mean, again,
that's so nice.
If you're going to spend so much time with these group of people, it sure would be nice if you guys could like each other. And it's great to see that. I mean, I don't know if you have done more segments in the deli or on the stage of the Ed Sullivan Theater, but it's got to be fairly close. You were in that deli a lot on camera.
I know. I love being in the deli. I mean, every time we'd be like going in the deli, I was like, yes. Also too, because it wasn't freezing. I don't know if anyone has told you how cold it was in the
Yes.
theater, but it was freezing. I mean, like, you sometimes I would be in the back off stage waiting, you know, for our segment to come on with Andrea and Andrea, sorry. It's true
Andrea,
that
yep.
Andrea, because she's Brazilian. So we would be there. I would be like shaking like leaves, and we're like, "Oh my God, I'm so cold, I'm so cold." And we had like these big coats on, and you could literally see our breath. That's how
Yeah.
cold it was. And we were wearing like these little tiny dresses, you know, like, so we would just be freezing cold. So at least when we do a segment in Hello Delhi, I mean, and this is not the main reason why it was great to do anything there, but it was certainly welcome. It was warm.
Yep.
You know, it was warm because Rupert would always just be so warm and lovely and welcoming and happy, but also he kept the heat on, so we wouldn't be freezing.
Yeah, well, you gotta have
so
the
we
grill
would get
on to make a
that.
Paul Schaefer sandwich. So how did it work? So like when you knew that you were going to go to the show that day, did you ever know what was waiting for you? Was stuff done in advance, or was it completely unpredictable?
Completely unpredictable.
Wow.
And yeah, but I mean, we'd get there and then they would say, okay, you're gonna do this, 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 and we'd have to rehearse it.
Yep.
Which, you know, I mean, towards after we Andrea and I had been doing it for a while, we used to think like, why are we even coming in to rehearse? Like, you know, all we literally had to do is like we wear a sparkly dress, we put on heels, and we go like this, we go like this, we go like this. You know, it wasn't that complicated. You know, like we were always like, why are we rehearsing? You know, but anyways, we rehearsed, and often things would just what would mostly happen, I think, at the last minute is that we would get bumped because an interview went very well and went longer than Dave had anticipated,
Yep.
or a segment that he was doing, the audience, let's say someone in the audience was like, you know, giving him more than he expected, and they rolled with it a little longer.
Yep.
Or other times, if things weren't going well, sometimes we'd be like, we weren't supposed to do it till like the second segment or, you know, whatever. And all of a sudden we'd be called and we'd hear it over the PA. And you're like, Nadine, yeah, downstairs now. And we'd be like, oh my God. And we'd like run, we'd grab our like high heels, like run down the stairs. Because we used to hang out on the 4th floor.
Yeah.
And there was an elevator, but I do not know why that elevator was like the slowest elevator that you can imagine. It would take forever. So you'd have to wait and wait and wait. And, you know, Dave, you know, one thing with Dave, he's a perfectionist, you know, and you just never wanted to be the person that was late. You wanted to be, if he said now, you wanted to be now ready to go and there and perfect for him, you know? So we used to just, it was hilarious because sometimes I don't know how I didn't fall down those stairs and break my neck. I mean, like, because we go, oh my God. And we just like run, you know, run all the way down the stairs, all the way, and then get to the back, you know, like in the holding area.
Yep.
And be like, I was trying to calm down. And then, like, you know, the cameras would roll. So we would be like, you know, like nothing happened. You know, we're like, oh my God, oh, what? But you know, so I guess that just added to the adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
You know, because you know, oh, I didn't mean to cut you off, Mike. I'm sorry.
No, you go.
Say something?
You're the highlight of the show.
Sorry. Oh no, I mean we both are. Well, Dave is.
I think if you take a poll, Nadine, I think we're just gonna go the other way.
I don't know about that, but anyway, oh yeah. So actually, what's interesting is that Dave called us. It was, I think there was a snowstorm or it was raining a lot. Some weird weather thing was happening, and Andrea and I were not meant to be on the show that day, but I got a call from my agent.
Motion detected in the front yard.
And and it was Dave asking if we could come to the show like right away, ASAP.
Yeah.
Like they wanted to do a segment and they needed us right now. And I was like, oh my God, okay. So I left wherever I was, her the same. We both down there, we get over to the show, and Dave wanted us, I think it was like torrential downpour rain, or maybe it was a blizzard. It was one of the two, because we would
Yeah.
often be called upon for those kinds of situations. And we ended up, Dave came in, Dave wanted us to be there to take his raincoat and his umbrella or whatever when he came in to do his, the show, right? Because, he'd always run into from off stage,
Yep.
center stage, to start his monologue, but there was like an intro with music and stuff. So he asked us if we would do it. And I was like, sure, no problem. So we come, we take his stuff, and he goes, and he did that. Then he decided he wanted us again the next night. Well, to make a long story short, that's how Andrea and I wound up being there like every night, because before that we would mostly just do segments.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the audience just loved it, and they just really responded well to us being there. So we wound up being there every day, and we were part of the opening act. So we would come, there would be Eddie Brell, who would do a monologue.
Yep.
Then Alan Coulter would come and say different things. Then the band, right, would come and start playing the music. And then Andrea and I would come out, and when they could see us through the scrim, and we would just be like, going crazy, whatever. And the audience knew. So we just helped to build them up and build up the, the energy and the expectations, so that when Dave came running out, everybody was just going crazy. So that was a lot of fun. And we did that, I don't know how long we did it every night, but that's how the Hi Ho Babes were born.
I am really excited that you told me that part. That part hadn't hit my radar. We've had Eddie on the show a couple of times. We just had Felicia on from the band, and
oh, she's so cool.
Oh,
what a cool lady,
one of the coolest human beings on the planet.
Yeah.
I adore her. And we've talked on other people as well. We've had Bones on, Will as well from the band, talking about the element of, as the show is about to start, the energy you talk about, gosh, a room that you could feel energy, the Ed Sullivan Theater, when the band got going, after the warm-up comic, after Eddie or Alan or Bill would come out and warm the audience up, when the band kicked in, the energy, literally, you could feel it in every single pore of your body. And the idea that you and Andrea were behind the curtain doing that, being a part of that, getting the ramp up.
It was a scrim, so they could see us,
Yeah.
right? But then they timed it in such a way so that when we would come out, first the band started, and then we'd be cued, of course, and we'd come out, and then we'd start and when we came out, they knew that Dave was going to be there soon. So it was a transparent kind of scrim, almost like a mosquito screen kind of scrim. You know what I mean?
They named it on the show once. They gave an extra one to an audience member. They named it. I forget the name. I forget what it was, but it's to create depth. And you'd watch Dave run through before the show, and then it would lift up.
That's right.
So you were in behind.
So we would come
Dave's
out
runway,
first,
basically.
Yeah, and then I think it would go up before he ran out. So it would go
that
up.
might be it.
And when it went up, then he would come running out, and he would grab me and Andrea, and he was like, and everyone was just going nuts, I was such an adrenaline rush. I mean, because you could feel the audience would just become this it almost felt like the audience became one. Instead of a bunch of people, it just felt like one huge wall of energy, and everybody would just be so stoked, and so excited, and they'd be going and clapping and going berserk, and it was very exhilarating, you
So
know,
you were there
like
every
that.
so I mean, I've got 400 and some odd appearances here, but there were lots of nights that you were there that you just never appeared on camera. Basically, you were just part of
Yeah.
the. I didn't know that part of it. Now obviously you were put into. I imagine, and again, I'm trying to figure out how this all works because from Western Canada, I
Okay.
wasn't part of show business. The unions, like the different unions
Yeah.
of
I was
all.
SAG AFTRA.
Okay, so you basically right from the start, I guess you would have been thrown into that union, or maybe even before Letterman.
Oh yeah, I was in there before Letterman. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was SAG AFTRA before I started doing the Late Show.
How does it work? Are you still technically a member?
Yeah, I just took like a hiatus, for
Yep.
lack of a better word.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm still, I think they call it a dormant member. So I'm still
Gotcha.
a dormant member of SAG and AFTRA. And which you're allowed to do if you're not doing things on a regular and consistent basis anymore, which I certainly am not. But yeah, so I was a union member prior to starting. I'm not sure because the Late Show, you don't need to be SAG, you need to be AFTRA because it's
Yeah.
live television.
By the way, I'm going to throw this out there for my wife because she loves fashion and these things, and she will literally hang me if I don't ask you a question like this, knowing that you've had the career that you've had. What are some of the lines or some of the companies that you've worked for that are kind of highlights in your mind? What are some of the things that you've enjoyed doing on the modeling
What do you
side?
mean, companies? Well, I think what I enjoyed most was just doing editorial. I did some campaigns as well,
Yep.
but like for Clairol and Escada, I can't remember everything anymore. It's been so long.
Yeah.
But I think what I preferred the most is just editorial because that's really when everyone had an opportunity to be very creative and you didn't have to necessarily be thinking about the clothes in the same way as if you're working for a catalog or a campaign, for example, because that's when you're working for a catalog or campaign, you're really thinking about the commercial aspect of photography. So, you're thinking about the product, you're thinking about making the product look fantastic. Whereas when you're doing editorial, you're thinking more about a feeling and a mood and you don't necessarily have to see the clothes perfectly. It's more about that, like it was more artistic and creative, and I think I just always preferred that. And Europe, even though the European publications didn't pay as well or weren't maybe as well known as a lot of the American ones.
Right.
Oh my God, like in Europe, it was really off the charts. Like you could really just do like black and white. It could be dark, like it could be gloomy. It could be like, or it could be the inverse. It could be very happy. It could be, like there was a lot more creative artistic license, I think, in Europe than in North America, because in Europe they just really, if you were doing editorial, they didn't care whatsoever about the commercial aspects of fashion whatsoever. It was just really about creating a mood and a feeling and doing something interesting and cool. So I like that a lot.
That's cool. I can sense you talk about the artist. I want to talk about what you're doing now. Then we'll get back to some more Late Show memories here in a minute. But I want to talk about, because you are an artist. That's who you are. That's what you've had different phases, obviously, in your career. It makes a lot of sense that the modeling part of your career, the things that you would attach yourself to, are the more creative elements to it. It clearly is who you are. You stopped doing the Late Show when you had your son?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was pregnant in 2003. My son was born June 28th, 2004. And as you can imagine, those sparkly dresses would look kind of strange on a pregnant lady. So,
Goddamn
it just
biology.
was time to, yeah. So, but Dave, God bless him and God love him, did tell me when I left the show that anytime I wanted to come back, the door would always be open. I could come back anytime I wanted. And, after having my son, you have kids, so you can certainly understand and relate to this. I think it really changes you, it changes your priorities. It changes what you value and what you think is important in life. And, my son just became the focus of my existence. I just adored him. I was so in love with him. I still am. But, so I just didn't feel anymore like going back into acting or fashion or any of that. I just really felt like putting my son's needs before my own and make him like important, and I became secondary. And so because of that decision and choice, I decided eventually to also leave New York when my son was 3 and move back to Montreal. I moved 5 streets away from my mom. And and I mean, I just felt that in Canada, I love New York City,
absolutely.
And my son's father still lives there. So New York always still was a part of my son's existence and mine. And whenever I go back to the city, I always go see everybody up at the show. Never would I ever have gone without saying hi to everyone. But I just didn't feel like going back into all of that anymore. I was very happy with doing something different, like I did that pretty much my whole life up until I had my son, from like, I started modeling when I was 17 and a half. Wow. So, I had never known anything else. And it was just wonderful. I have to say, it's just so, my son is a blessing. He's just such a wonderful person. And I'm so lucky to be his mom. I mean, he's just the greatest kid ever, which I'm sure every parent feels about their child. Sure. But I just love my son. And I just feel like so lucky because, I have friends that never, all they did was have children very young and they didn't really have a career. And I feel like so lucky that not only did I have a career, I had like this extraordinary life, that was in the spotlight, and I did things that many people just only dream about, and it was my reality. And I think I got all that out of my system, and then to just then be blessed with a healthy child who's perfect, that you love and adore. And then for the first time in my life, I got, because my whole life had been so different from like parenting and being a mother and doing all of that. And then, to be able to have that and to know what that is, and to be able to be a mom and experience motherhood and to have my son and to have a normal life, afterwards. So I don't think I took any of that for granted because I really loved it. It was so different for me, to just live a normal life, I was very happy. And I have to say, I just feel very fortunate in life that, God or the universe, for lack of whatever you want to say, has just been so good to me. I've been very lucky. I've been very fortunate in my life. And I'm really very grateful for the good fortune I've had, in a career capacity and then as a parent with a child. And, I feel very blessed. That's for sure.
Gratefulness is one of my favorite things in the world. I think it's a silver bullet. I host a men's mental wellness podcast as well. And we talk about gratefulness with a lot of the guests that we have on, whether they're counselors or life coaches or psychologists. And they talk about how gratefulness is a silver bullet for so many feelings of anxiousness or fear or anything like that. Gratefulness, many times, if you can coat yourself in gratefulness, and you can get to the point where it naturally just beams out of you, as it clearly is beaming out of you. It is such a it's such a wonderful state to live in. And you talk about this love. I mean, I've got a granddaughter who she's my everything. You know, she's my favorite thing on the whole world. I don't know if you can see that or not.
I
But
can't. Oh my God.
she is like,
Beautiful.
my
How
granddaughter
old?
is everything to me. And you don't know love. You think you
Oh,
know
I
it,
thought
and
she was
then
your daughter.
that's my granddaughter.
Oh my God, your granddaughter.
Yeah.
Would you have her when you were like 12?
You're a charmer.
I think so.
She's
I don't know.
she's my everything, and I just that love is it's indescribable, and it's all you want to talk about when somebody starts talking about, you know, the love for a child or the love for a grandchild. It's all you want to talk about. David Letterman is one of those people. You know, like
Yeah.
later on in life,
Harry.
like he had
Oh
this
my God.
crazy
Yeah.
career, and then suddenly Harry's born, and the
Yeah.
guy in, you know, Jason Zinneman talks about this, how talk show hosts, many times it's about the show, but then it becomes about the host, and the host, you get to know the host over the years. Dave, with his tenure that he had, we got to know him really, really well. That first segment after the monologue where he was sitting behind the desk and many times just talking. Once Harry was born, I mean, that's all he wanted to talk about, and the love that he has for his son to this very day. You know, Harry's
Yeah.
in college and university now. We talk about that because every time Dave does an interview, he tells us where Harry's at, and that's his highlight. How
It's amazing
special!
with children.
That's kind of a neat bond. I don't know if you two have ever talked about that personally, but the idea that you both had these really cool kind of careers with all these adventures and stuff, and then discovered the love of having a child. That's something that you and Dave both share.
Yeah. Well, actually, you know, when I was listening to you right now talk about all that, you know what I found interesting is that for a long time, um, comedians believed that you couldn't be a successful comedian and also have like a family and children, and so it's interesting that a lot of comedians have that kind of, or used to. I don't think they do anymore today, but you go back like 20, 30 years ago, and that was sort of like common, like everybody, just a lot of comedians believe that. And I think that Dave is living proof that that's just not true, because he
he can be
didn't suddenly.
just as zany having the love of a child than and being well adjusted than not.
Yeah.
You know, and absolutely, it's one of the lessons that he learned. By the way, just a couple of notes here. The rainstorm was September 18th of 99. And it was Hurricane Floyd. Just shows how impressive Don is. There you go. That's
Oh, there you are. That's
there
us.
you go.
That's it. That's when we started. That was it. That was it. That's the lunch. Well, even Dave and them didn't know at the time, but it just, you know what? The audience just loved us. And it just went so well that they, Dave is, like, he loves his show, and he always wants to make the audience happy and give the viewers like a great ride. And when he sees something's working, he always will then stick with it, and he'll ride with it and go with it. So that's how that like got born, like that became like something that the audience just really, really, they loved us,
Yes.
So we were just thrilled. I mean, we were like, wow, okay, and then I remember Dave having a meeting with me and Andrea, asking us if we would consider doing it full time, and we're like, sure. And afterwards, me and Andrea, we left Dave's office, and we both like hugged each other, and we did a happy dance. We were like, we were like so excited. So
that delights
it was just, it was just really fun. We were both like, oh my God, we were so happy. We were like, yeah, we're gonna do this every day. Like, we're giving each other high fives, like, yeah, so that was really, really, that was really fun.
I get a unique vicarious kick out of there are some people. Do you remember Brian Tetta? He was a segment producer. Okay, so Brian.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so he started out as an intern, moved up to a segment producer, and then end up now he's the executive producer of The View. But guys like him or Joe Grossman, guys who or gals who came in as an intern, wanted to be part of the family so bad. And then, whatever day it was where they actually got the call that the internship turned into a job, or the assistant job became a full-fledged writer's job, or whatever that is, I get a vicarious kick out of that, because so many of these people, that was, like you said, they just wanted to work for Dave. They just wanted to please Dave. I have, for whatever reason, I have that as well. And I get a vicarious rush of energy when I hear former staffers or people who worked for the show talking about that day when they found out that they were going to be there permanently. I'm a collector. I got to ask this question here too. I've got a couple other moments that I want to give to you. Are you okay for time? You okay for time?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
No,
good.
fine.
Good. I just want to make sure I don't want to overstep anything.
No,
I'm a
not
collector.
at all. No. But thank you for asking.
Oh, okay, man. And by the way, a foregone conclusion, we're going to invite you back, just so you know. Maybe we have you on, and you and Rupert on at the same time or something. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I love to
Rupert
collect
and I
things.
can reminisce.
Absolutely. Well, that's exactly it.
You know
And
what's really sad?
what?
It's that, because I was thinking about this before I came on my interview with you, because we were going to do it last week.
Yes.
And I was trying to think. I thought, oh my God, what am I going to talk about? I haven't thought about the show in so long. My life is so different now, and blah 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 blah. You have conversations with yourself, right?
Yep.
So I was thinking, I was like, oh my God, could you imagine if when we did the show, it would be like today, with everyone have their cell phone with a camera in it? Because when we were doing the show,
Yep.
we couldn't take pictures with the people that would come.
Nope.
So it was like an unwritten rule that you never ever asked any celebrity for their autograph. You didn't ask them for a picture. The only person who could take pictures with the celebrities was Michelle, and she was Dave's personal makeup artist.
Yep.
And they would come upstairs, and they would come to hair and makeup. And whenever they'd come to hair and makeup, Michelle would always make sure to take a picture of herself and them, like a selfie, before they were even selfies. And so the makeup room was covered, all the walls are plastered with all these pictures of her and celebrities, which at that time, well, that was very rare, right? Because none of us were allowed to do that. I mean, sometimes we could sneak, or they'd look the other way.
Who was one you snuck with? I got to know the answer to that question. Who was one or two of them that you took a sneak with?
Well, they knew that if a Canadian came on, I had to have a picture with them. But I mean, not all Canadians, but because sometimes I could just tell that someone was just not going to be approachable. Because, in the old days, celebrities did not like having their pictures taken, unless it was set up. So when they would leave the show outside, it was an understanding that's where all the paparazzi would be. Yeah. And all the photographers, and the celebrity would stand outside the front, at the back door, the side door.
Yeah, the side door
Stage
right beside
entrance.
Rupert's was an event every show, basically, when people arrived and left. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where we went through. Not Dave. Dave had a secret entrance and exit, which I'm not going to
freight elevator.
Well, he had, well, I'm not going to say where he went, but he would leave and enter the building in secrecy. Yes. So he never came in through the stage door, and he never left through the stage door. But all the celebrities, that's where everyone came through. And, we had, what's his name, William, who was the security guy, bouncer. Oh, I loved him. He was such a sweetheart.
Chief?
He was hilarious.
Yeah.
William,
okay.
Yeah. So these people would every celebrity knew that. So when they arrived, it was their PR people and their handlers would all be there with them. And then they would come in, and they would always stop for the cameras, take the pictures, click, 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 sign some autographs. But everyone knew that once they crossed the threshold into the Ed Sullivan Theater, that they would not be harassed, right? They
Mhm.
wouldn't be asked for a picture. They wouldn't be asked for an autograph. They wouldn't be asked for any of that stuff. And because, sometimes I think to myself, oh my God, like, I had such an extraordinary life. I met so many of these people. And, you could not take a picture with them. They were like, not allowed. And I think, like, can you imagine today? Like
Oh
today, I
yeah.
think if a celebrity came and you didn't ask them to take a picture with you, they
Yep.
would be like, "What's wrong with her?" Like, what, am I not popular? Like like the mindset has completely changed, right? So that before that was considered invasive, like an invasion of that person's space and privacy.
Yes.
A celebrity back then had clearly defined, I don't want to say walls, but
No, but there was a fence around, and there was a culture or a certain
had
type of, what's the
parameters,
word?
like
Yeah.
boundaries, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
during certain times, you couldn't impose into their space, in their boundary or whatever.
Yes.
I was thinking to myself, when I was thinking back on the show, I thought to myself, gosh, can you imagine doing the show now? I
Yeah.
mean, that poor celebrity from the they'd never get a break. Like, as soon as they walk through the doors, people are like, oh, can I just get a selfie? Can I just take a picture? Or they'd be filming them, or, like,
Yep.
they would never have the downtime that they were afforded, and, the luxury of having some space between themselves and their persona, their public persona. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like, they were allowed to be a private person.
Yep.
And today, I think that, the way the culture is with the phones and with everything, the expectation that we have for celebrities has totally changed. So there's like 24/7, like we don't give them any kind of time off, like, and
Absolutely.
the expectation is such that those poor people, like, you're never allowed to say, hey, don't film me, can you just leave me alone? You know so that's really also something very special, because that was almost like a completely different um way of handling celebrities, and how they interacted with the world around them, right? And
Yes.
regular people. And people were very respectful of them and their privacy and their personal space. And that's just completely been erased.
I gotta tell you, I fucking love how it's gone down this path here. I love the places that are unpredictable when we have conversations like this, because I think it's a really important thing. Part of the reason we do the show is we want to transfer kind of the knowledge of what was to who is here now. And I mean, so much of what's here now was inspired by that show. And it's, I'm not being hyperbolous when I say that. And talking about how we have seen the culture shift in that
Yeah,
time,
big time.
our perspectives, like you and I have the gift of being able to say we remember life before the internet, we remember life, and we've seen these incremental changes now, to the point where you talk about celebrity, where their personal beliefs many times can, they have to be careful about what they even say, even
Yeah,
offhand. If they say something, the wrong thing offhand, directors have been fired off of movies because of things they've said 10-15 years ago, that kind of a thing. Actors, I can think of a few off the
that's
top of my head
crazy.
right now. In the culture that we have here, talking about these, it's so interesting how celebrity has flipped the way that it has. And you were talking about a different time and a different age
Yeah.
with a different etiquette. That being said, Don just threw this at me. There's Robin Williams
Oh,
right
yeah, yeah,
there.
I took that. That's one of those times that,
That's what
you
Don
know,
figured. Don figured there's an
yeah.
example right there of
Well,
one
because
you
he was
took.
so sweet. He was crazy, that man. But I loved him. So what happened was Michelle, took a picture with him.
Yep.
And I was just sitting there, and Michael, he used to do the hair. She used to do the makeup. I was sitting in Michael's chair, and she took a picture with Robin Williams. And I just, was watching. And Robin Williams kept talking to me because he's so friendly and nice. And he said to me, hey, why am I not getting a picture with you? And I said, I don't know, I don't think we're supposed to do that. And he was like, oh, don't worry about that. And like, so he was just like, you're getting a picture with me. I want a picture with you. And he was just, and then he went into like all these different voices and, these different characters. And then I ended up getting a picture with him. I was so happy. I was like, oh my God, thank you, because I didn't ask him, so I couldn't get in trouble. And, I got a picture with Robin Williams and he was just wild. But I mean, that man was just like, he just, I found that him and Jim Carrey were
Yep.
both very similar. Like they had that kind of manic, intense, unpredictable, also they were great mimics,
Yeah.
so they
Yep.
would be able to just, and like they'd say something to you and you didn't even almost have a chance to answer and they'd already be like 10 miles further down the road,
Yep.
so you're just like, but they were great. They were great. Yeah, Robin Williams was really, God bless his soul. That's so sad that he's no longer with us because he was such a nice person. It's so weird because you would have never guessed that he was not happy inside,
Yeah.
ever. I mean, he didn't give off that sort of, he didn't, I don't think maybe people that were close to him could have been privy to see that. But I'm sure, that's one thing, how we touched on a little bit before about the energy of
Yes.
the show. Okay.
Yes.
So I can see for a lot of people how that can become addictive because the energy that you get from a live performance,
That adrenaline
and
you talked about. Yes.
oh my God, like
Yep.
from a live studio audience that's really excited to see you and they're already in a good mood. They're happy. They're going to be on the show. And they give you so much love.
Yes.
You get all this love and just like basking in, and you're like, oh my God, wow. It's like insane. You're just like, holy smoking guns, I mean, they just love you. And it's like wave after wave after wave of like unconditional, intense love and energy. And you're just like, and then it's over and you're not on set, or you're not rolling, you're not live. And you have to come, it's like it throws you like a tidal wave up
Yes.
into the sky and you're free floating and it's like, wow, 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 wow. And then all of a sudden, boom, you got to come back down. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah. Like, it's quiet.
Yep.
And, the lights are down and,
Yep.
your energy, it's just totally, it's like a one extreme to the next,
And you're walking by people on the street who are just going through their daily lives, having no idea that you just had this experience. And you have to reconcile that by going back into the real world. Did you have any, okay, so show finishes at 5:30, 6 o'clock, whatever. At what point are you released when the show is over?
Oh, well, it depends because sometimes we had to stay longer because they like to go over the tapes, because it was a live show, but it was taped.
Yep.
So sometimes you had to wait to just make sure that, so we could never just leave. We always had to be released,
And where did you wait? Were you on the fourth floor?
Well, it depends. A lot of times I just wait in the green room, quite honestly, because I told you the elevator didn't work that great. And I hated running up and down those stairs,
Yeah.
So I would just say, okay, let me know. And I just hang out in the green room. Plus the green room was always well stocked. There was tons of cookies and all kinds of like yummy food that, and they also had fruit platters, but in those days I used to eat a lot of cookies and stuff like that. I loved that. And they always had like the mini fridge, there was always soda or water or whatever. And it was very comfortable, the green room. So, I just hang out in the green room or I'd go downstairs to where the tech guys, everybody that worked in the camera and all that,
You'd
they
go to the
also
control
had a
room.
lounge. No, well, there was a lounge downstairs,
Oh,
and
I see.
that's where
Okay.
all those guys would eat. Actually, I used to always eat dinner with them because Thursday nights we had 2 shows, right?
Yep.
Because we never worked Fridays.
Yep.
So I would always make a point to go have dinner with the guys because I loved them. They were so sweet. So
By
I
the way,
would
let's do a
always
shout
go
out to Shecky right
downstairs.
now, because Shecky loves you as well, and he's one
Oh,
of the people
I
that.
love Shaky.
Yeah.
He's so sweet. But they're
Yeah.
all so nice, So every time we'd have break, instead of going off and having dinner somewhere else or whatever, I would just go downstairs to the basement, the lower level, and I would go sit with all the guys and have dinner with them. And they were just wonderful. They're just so nice, They're like all the groups, everybody, like the camera guys,
Yep.
just everyone, all the tech guys. They would all be down there eating dinner because it was catered. They
Yep.
all dinner was part of their show. I think CBS furnished that. So I would always go down and just hang out with them because they were just so sweet and wonderful. And it's just nice because, as I said, it always felt to me like a family there.
Yep.
So if I went down there, I just felt like I was hanging out with like my brothers or something, like everybody was just, they were all so nice, they
Lots
just
of
made me
laughing
feel
in
good.
those rooms, I bet. Lots of laughter, I bet.
Yeah. It was just like, they were just, so I just really enjoyed doing that. But yeah, so we'd have to eventually leave. And but actually, I have to say to you, Mike, that oddly, that energy also, because when the audience gives you that massive dose of love and energy, and you're just like drinking it in, you also have to be a fireball, and you have to go in yourself, and you have to dig really, really deep because you don't want to disappoint them. So every night, like all you do for most of your day is conserve your energy so that when showtime came and you had to come out on that stage, you would be able to go deep down into yourself and pull out that energy, just go, and
Yep.
just give them everything. Give them your soul, your heart, your energy, your vibe, your happiness. Just shoot it out at the audience. And the more you did that, it was like an electrical current. Because the more you gave, the more you would receive from them. And it was just wonderful. I can't imagine, people who are, musical performers and singers and stuff. It must just be, but at the same time, as exhilarating and addictive as that is, right? Because it's very, you get addicted to that, like that charge,
Yep.
But it's also exhausting. So
Absolutely.
Friday would come around and you just sleep all day. Friday would just be like, like I wouldn't even answer my phone. I'd just be completely exhausted and spent because I had taken all of my psychic energy, my spiritual energy, my physical force, everything, and I would just give that to the audience every time that we would come out, But then eventually we didn't do the opening anymore. We just kept doing skits and stuff. That was a lot less tiring. That's why Dave's amazing. Dave is a machine, because think about it. That man, right?
Yeah.
He's older than me by a little bit. Like, so think about how incredible that guy was able to sustain every single night, right? Coming out, running out onto the stage, getting people giving them all that energy, going in straight into his monologue, then, little break for commercial, and then coming back and woof, he's just on for like that. And prior to him going on TV, he used to get there at the crack of dawn some days, and all he would do is research. And then he'd stay sometimes till 11 o'clock at night. And, he'd be watching clips, he'd be reading newspapers from all over the world. I don't think people understand
No.
how hard Dave worked on that show. It's not just the hour that they saw him at night.
No.
I mean, he
Not
would
even close.
literally, that show, he lived, breathed, drank, slept, blinked. The Late Show. He was constantly just like, reading all kinds of obscure publications, looking for material, doing that. I mean, it's insane that he was able, without being burnt out, like he's superhuman. Because,
Absolutely. Have you
like, I'm
have you
saying,
watched any of his stuff since he finished the Late
Yeah.
Show? Have you watched the Netflix stuff?
of course, I love him. I'll always
too.
watch anything he does, I will watch it, right? Because I
Ah.
just adore him. And I think he's brilliant. And I'm really happy for him, actually, because I think with this, my next guest needs no introduction. I think he seems a lot more relaxed.
Yes.
And he seems to in the Late Show, I think in a weird way, it seemed to be more about Dave.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
even the interviews and stuff, it seemed more about him.
Sure.
And it seemed, like it was his show and you were a guest on it.
Yes.
And I don't mean that in a bad way, by the way.
Not at
I
all.
think that's
No.
what made
His show
the
had
show
a
work.
sensibility, and that sensibility, the culture of it, all stemmed from him.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he had a personality.
Yep.
And he was, himself. He was, David Letterman, and these celebrities would come on, and he never. You always felt that he was on an equal footing with everyone, and
Yes.
that that they understood that he was the star and they were the star. There wasn't like sometimes you watched other talk show hosts and you felt them recede, and that the celebrity would become more the focus or whatever. With Dave, because he was so smart and quick, you always got the feeling that he was always present, even in his silence.
Very
Right? Even
much
when he
so.
said nothing, he would just do something and take his coffee or, go, and, that's all he had to do. And he was present the whole time. Like you always felt two people in his interviews,
Yes.
like you never felt that there was a monologue happening with the guest.
Nope.
And I find that in his new show, what's different for me watching it, and I could be wrong, I'm not a critic or anybody like that. It's just my impression, right? So
Yep.
it has nothing to do with anything. I'm not like an expert on the Late Show by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, I would say
Dave.
that you probably are an expert just with the amount of time that you've actually seen this. I think the opinion that you give is going to be a very unique one. So I'm very curious what you're about to say about.
I think
the
it'd
new
be
show.
unique, but I don't think you would make me an expert. Like I think
Okay,
there's
fair
far
enough. Well,
more
fair enough.
qualified, like Barbara Gaines, or like the people, Mary Barkley, the people that really, really are with Dave all the time and they know everything about him. They're the experts for sure, not me. But I feel that when I've watched the show, I actually feel like Dave, it's not about him now.
Yes.
I feel like Dave, he's obviously part of the, the reason why you turn in is because, you like Dave.
Because it's Dave,
think
absolutely.
He's smart.
Yep.
But I find that he seems to, let them be, like he doesn't try to control the interview as much. He's not trying to go for the laughs. I don't know. I don't remember. Is it taped? It's for a live audience in California.
So
or sometimes it is.
yeah.
Sometimes
They have the pre-tape segments, and then of course the pandemic changed things a little bit. But I think the sweet
Right.
spot of that show is when they do an interview in front of an audience, and then they have the pre-tapes and some of the things that they do to expand on that. You hit on something that I think is really key, though. The star of the show isn't so much Dave, but it's Dave's curiosity. Before you talked about how naturally curious Dave is. I think on this show here, the part of Dave that is the star is his curiosity, because he's so invested, because he has all this time. Our show, the Letterman Podcast, exists because so many of the moments that you and I have talked about today, they get discarded because there's another show tomorrow night. And I think about some of the interesting guests he might have had during his late show time, and how, you know, he probably naturally would have wanted to get more curious about that guest, but there's guests
time
before, there's guests after in the same show. There's another show tomorrow night, another one. Whereas the new show, he can sink into the topic or the person, and his curiosity can be the star, and the wit and all of that stuff, the whip smartness of Dave, as you said, can kind of show up when it needs to. But really, it's his curiosity that drives the show.
Yeah, and I think he seems to be giving, because, you know, as you said, he's not on a clock, and I guess he's not in the network, you know, where they have to constantly consider like censorship or you know, sponsorship or whatever. He's free now of that. And I find that he seems to be giving, you know, taking a little bit of a back seat, you know, like he sits there and he asks really good questions and he guides the interview, but at the same time, it seems like there's a little more leeway and freedom there, and you know, he's just sitting back a little bit. And he allows that person, because I thought that, especially with that Will Smith, I thought that was a very good interview with Will Smith. I mean, they're all good interviews, but I particularly, the Will Smith interview really resonated with me. And he really allowed Will Smith, you know, to just be the dominant force of that show. And I thought, wow, that's interesting, you know, like that, it's different. So the show, I think it's a different side of Dave that we're all being privy to see. And, you know, I think it's really cool that Dave is not exactly giving everybody the same thing that he was giving them on the Late Show.
No,
like,
and that's another
different.
That's another part of this show that we love to talk about, is the evolution. Because I mean, you know, and I mean, there's so many stages of the evolution. We're talking about a 33-year plus, much longer now when you include, you know, my next guest and some of the other projects that he's done. How much evolution there has been, and you're right, he's at that place now where there's nothing left to prove. Let's just have some fun and talk, and it's going to kind of flow naturally, depending on the personality of the person. I don't know if you're a music person or not, but have you heard about the U2 thing that's about to come out?
The what? The U2?
Dave,
yes. Oh, they're going to do something in, yeah. That's
going to be really cool to see. Like, I love watching him interact with these different icons of every era, you know, down to Billie Eilish now, you know, the hero of
that was a great interview too.
Fantastic.
That was a very good interview.
Absolutely.
Very good interview.
His difference, that's the difference between, I think, him and some of his predecessors. You know, Johnny Carson, before he retired, talked about how, you know, show business, everybody in show business is gone, and he was talking about his version of show business. Whereas Dave, while there are these giants that he may have looked on as he grew up, he's not afraid to be curious about what is cool in the culture now, and Billie Eilish is a good example of that. I love that part. I'm a huge fan.
He went to our house. That was very cool, right?
Oh yeah.
And her brother was part of it too. So it was and he got into how she creates her music, which I didn't, you know, I wasn't familiar with how she comes to, because I find her fascinating, fantastic. I really like her music a lot, and especially when she first came out, it was so different, and you know, she was such a different kind of celebrity, like in pop culture, you know, like it was amazing, like and I didn't know how she created and came about her songs, and when her and her brother talked about that, I found that really very interesting.
Oh yeah, I love it. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question that I many times will save till the end. I'm going to ask it to you now because there's a couple moments I want to talk to you about to finish off. I hate that it's like remember how last night I said, yeah, it's going to go no problem. Like, look at us. We're 90 minutes plus now. No problem.
Oh,
And
really?
we could,
Oh, I'm so sorry. Because
are
you
you
have
kidding
my
me? I
phone.
love
Because we were
this.
gonna
And we
do
could
it
do it
with.
again and again and again. We're good.
Yeah, but because we did it with my phone instead of my iPad,
Yeah.
so I don't know what time it is. Because like my phone is doing this Zoom,
Yeah.
meeting. So I can't. I have no. My
It's already
phone is
3
my only
o'clock your
clock.
time right now.
Oh
We
my god!
I know, I love it. Hey,
Oh
this
my
is
god! I can't even
time
believe
gets
that.
slippery doing these things, and it's such a wonderful byproduct of this show, and the fact that it's just working the way it is that time gets very slippery when we do this stuff.
I see that.
So I
I
do have a
need
couple
to
things.
know.
Did you collect anything from the show? Did you keep any mementos or souvenirs of any sort?
Oh yeah. Actually, I hope it's okay to
Let's
bring this
talk about
up,
it.
but
Sue Hung.
okay.
She gave you, yeah.
So yeah. So when Dave retired, I was fortunate enough to be able to. Actually, I couldn't make it. I was stuck in Canada at the time, but my son went, and Sue Hun, God bless her, had told me, she said, because we went to see Dave, when he was retiring, obviously, and we went to the show and everything, and it was very sad. Everybody was just like, I don't know, it was just a sad time.
Yes.
But Sue called me and she was like, Nadine, listen, do you want any of the dresses that you and Andrea used to wear? And she said, because, we're cleaning everything out. And oh my God, I have to tell you, Mike, can you believe I went, I think I went a few weeks later, right, back to New York City for work. And I actually saw them ripping out all the backgrounds
You were
and
there
throwing
that
them in
day.
dumpsters.
This got saved
Okay.
from that, by the way. This got saved from that day. This is one of the bridges that was.
Oh my God, how'd you get that?
Well,
Did you get someone who went into a dump? But
somebody
can you
saved
imagine?
it and held on to it.
I was just heartbroken. I was
Me
like,
too.
oh my God, why can't I have a U-Haul? And, I wish that I could just grab everything and take it and put it in a U-Haul and just drive it home, because it was killing me, because that set was phenomenal. Okay?
Absolutely.
Like, it was perfect. It was just so well done. And to see it all being dismantled and thrown in dumpsters. How could they do that? They should have offered it up for auction. I mean, it's not Dave's fault, but I mean, CBS, like, hello, could you
they
not
dropped the ball.
some of it and put it somewhere, and, up in the Ed Sullivan Theater, maybe in the entrance, like just one, sort of like the Berlin Wall, how the Berlin Wall was saved, like a piece of it.
Absolutely.
Maybe they could have saved like just a piece of that original set and put it somewhere so that people could still take pictures with it. I don't know. So anyway, when all of that was happening, so Suhan, God bless her, called me and said, listen, I don't know if this is going to be interesting to you or not, but, we're throwing everything away today. We're getting rid of everything. And she said, I don't know, like the sparkly dresses were decommissioned after I left. So she said, I know. I was very disappointed about that.
That's adorable.
There was one sparkly dress that I loved. It was orange with these like hanging little things. I love that. I think I have a picture of it somewhere. And if I do, which I have to go through my boxes, I'll find it and I'll send it to you, so you know which dress I'm talking about. I love that dress. But anyway, so she said, that's because I guess after a while they start to just not stay together. I mean, I think I have one or two of the sparkly ones, but for some reason they decided to shift us out of the very sparkly dresses and into more like subdued kind of fashiony dresses. So anyway, Sue said to me, look, do you want some of those dresses? And I said, well, I can't make it to New York, but my son's there. So could you give it to him? And she was like, absolutely, no problem. Just take them. So I'll show you what I have. I have a couple, and I would love to be able to, if there's somebody out there that has a charity or of some kind or some sort
Yep.
that I could donate these dresses to so that they could auction them off. I mean, maybe there's not even an interest. I don't know. But if in the remote chance there is, what a pleasure that would be for me to send these out.
I'm going to put the
So
picture
I
up you sent
have,
me as well. So I'm going to put that
yeah,
picture up
so
as well. Look at that.
I've got like one of these guys and I've got a bunch of them. So this was like the gold ones. And some of these were also worn by Rute, who came after me, my
Yep.
replacement.
Yeah.
But you know, so I've got like a bunch of these little dresses that we wore on the show. And as I said, you know, like if there's interest and someone wants to be able to auction them off, it would be a pleasure for me to be able to, you know, to do that. So these were quite popular. This one, it looks simple, but don't forget we had the, you know, the jewelry and the earrings.
Yeah, no.
So here's a sparkly one. Here's a sparkly one. So you see, like
Wow.
all like sparkly. That's the ones that Andrea and I love. We love these like sparkly numbers,
Yep.
you know, because they were a little more cocktail, you
For
know,
sure.
so a little more fun. But anyway, so I sent you a picture. So just to give you an idea, you know, they're all from the Late Show. They're all dresses that we wore with Dave in our segments. And, you know, anybody who knew the show will probably recognize a lot of these. Oh, here's another sparkly one.
Yep.
And the sparkly ones we don't have a lot of, but you know, so it gives you an idea of her and I, like we having a good time with those.
And you
so
were having a
I
good
don't know
time.
how many I had.
If there's one part about this conversation that I love so much, it's that you were having a good time. Like you came out there with $1 million smiles and all that. That's what you were there for. Clearly, you know, you were chosen for your roles, but the smiles were real. Like that's the thing I love so much. The joy that you would convey on screen was real. I hate that we have to kind of put this to a close. We'll get you back, right? Obviously, we'll figure out a way that we can do this.
Anytime.
Okay, this is good.
Anytime.
There's 2 moments now. Okay, so I'm gonna finish with the one moment here because I know it's so goddamn sweet. It's just one of these things where we have to talk about this moment right here. How the day he came back.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I have the t-shirt that Dave gave us from that too.
Yeah.
So we were talking about, you know, like we went through it all at that show, right? We went through so many experiences, so many emotions. We were both, Andrea and I, and that you can't tell, we were crying. The tears were rolling down our faces because we were so happy that Dave was back, and we were so happy that he was okay. And when he had on all the doctors, you know, that helped him and stuff, I mean, we were just so emotional. We were like, oh my God, Dave, you're back. Thank God. You know, we were just like, we were crying. We were actually crying, both of us crying while we were doing that opening. I mean, because we were just so happy that he was okay.
Yeah.
You know, like we're so happy because everybody was not sure. I mean, you know, everybody thought that, you know, if he was going to survive, not everyone was sure he was going to come back.
Yeah.
You know, just like when he had shingles too.
Shingles,
that scared the bejesus out of all of us. So, you know.
Yeah. You were there for some of the guest host shows too, I guess.
I'm sorry?
You were there for some of the shows that weren't hosted by Dave. They were hosted by guest hosts.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, like the show Paul hosted, you were there for sure for that one.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yeah, the shingles too. Yeah, there were times that you were there where, you know, Dave it was questionable as to what was going to happen. Hindsight's great. We all know how the story ended, but in the time, when he came back that night, when he came back and you and Andrea were wearing the medical scrubs, that picture we just showed, there was a lot of emotion that night, and the gratefulness that everybody had could be felt through the screen. That was such a sweet moment.
We were so happy. We were so happy that he was okay.
Yeah.
We were so happy. I mean, it was just like, thank God. And we just said to him, both her and I were like, oh my God, Dave, like, thank you. We're so glad you're back. We're so happy you're healthy. And, like, cause we were both worried about, I'm not just us. I mean, everybody, I think everybody at the show was really genuinely 100% concerned for Dave, and worried about him, worried, is he gonna be okay? Is he gonna come back? Is he gonna live? Is he, like, it's terrifying, right? When someone you care about and someone as gifted and as brilliant and special as him, that that happened to him, we were all just freaking out. We are just really, really concerned. So when he came back, everybody was just like, even at the show, like, in the background, like, everybody was just like, oh my God, everybody was just going like this, like, that whole show, everybody was just like, oh my God, he's back. Like, we're so happy. So yeah, that was really special.
There's only a couple
but
times
it was a special. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead. You keep going.
I think it was just a special kind of place to work. Even the good times, the bad times, the intense times, it didn't matter. It was always, everyone was such a trooper there, and everybody was just doing their best, giving their all. It was really, really, really lucky that I got to be part of that, because I think that's Dave's an icon. That show is, who can compare to him? Maybe Jack Parr, but there's just nobody who can hold a candle to Dave. I think he really, he's an icon. I think that's like a talk show host like no other.
You're preaching
and
to the
there'll
choir.
never be another Dave.
You're preaching to the choir. On this show, we like to call it the greatest body of broadcasting work in history, that of David Letterman and company. The magic is David Letterman is what you were talking about, and he surrounded himself with the company that he did, present company included. Before I make you tear up with the last image that Donna sent me. By the way, Don, thank you very much. This show is way better
Don,
with you helping.
Thanks for the pictures, Don.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love Don.
I'm going to send all these to you as soon as we're done here too.
Okay.
But he sent me
and
one
Rupert,
more here. Which
also, I want to just say again.
Oh, here he comes. Here he comes. A rare Don Giller appearance.
Okay. Rupert, you're awesome. I don't know if he can.
Thank you for
Is
being
he
you,
on
Don.
with us?
What's that?
Is he on with us?
Well, he was there for a second, so our audience all just got a chance to see a rare Don Giller sighting. So if you're playing the drinking game, now's the time to take a shot because you saw Don Giller. Everybody.
Okay.
So
thank you, Rupert. You're awesome, as you know.
Don and Rupert. Oh yeah.
His fantastic girlfriend. She's a sweetheart.
Oh.
So they're just a great couple.
We love hanging out. When next time that those two are hanging out together, we like to hang out on Zoom sometimes and just shoot the bull. I'll make sure you get invited to that. And if we might hit record, some of the fans might enjoy the stories that pop up. Who would you like to see Dave interview on his new show? Is there anybody that comes to mind that you would like to see Dave sit down with?
Geez, I'd have to really. Actually, I know this is gonna sound really, really weird.
Okay.
But because he had interviewed him in the past, and he's such a controversial figure.
Yeah.
And people, he's a divisive figure, right? Like, people hate him or love him. And I think that because Dave had interviewed him previously, I think it'd just be interesting to see how Dave would handle an interview with him now. And I'm sure people are going to hate me for saying this, but it's not a political endorsement whatsoever. Okay.
We're Canadian. We're immune.
That's right. So to us, it doesn't make a difference, but I would love to see him interview Donald Trump again.
Me too.
Because, I think that would be biting and interesting, and there's no censorship in the Netflix show. So Dave could just take that wherever he wanted, And I think that it would be interesting to see Because Dave, how many times did Donald go on the show before? But actually, Donald
lot.
in the beginning, he
A
used to
lot.
be a very good sport. Dave used to take, a lot of shots at him, and
Yep.
he would be open to that, and he was okay
Absolutely.
with it, and he would like roll with the punches and stuff. So I just find that I think would just be interesting, not so much because of Donald per se, but because of the history that was there.
Absolutely.
I would love to see how Dave would handle interviewing Donald now.
I totally agree. And at
Like, I
that
think
point, I don't
that,
think Dave would be the submissive. I think he would be kind of the old Dave with the take charge and I could not agree with you more. That is a fantastic answer. Before I show you this last picture that's going to make you cry and we take her home that way, is there anything else that you wanted to say on your first appearance here on the Letterman podcast? It was fantastic, by the way. You did a phenomenal job. Any nervousness that you were feeling, I hope has completely gone away. This has been so much fun.
well, I'd just like to say thank you to, obviously you and to Rupert, but also I really want to say thank you to everybody that I worked with at the Late Show. Everyone from the segment producers, the writers, the grips, the camera guys, the director, Jerry Foley. I mean, just everyone, okay? I would just like to say thank you to all of them for always being so nice to me and gracious and lovely, and for allowing me to work, and feel so welcomed, and just, it was just such a wonderful feeling to go to work with everybody. And everybody just treated me so well. And whenever they would create scenes for Andrea and I just really appreciate it all. So, outside of David Letterman, obviously, because, he's the one that hired me, but just everyone, I just really like to just be able, because I just like to say thank you. Thank you to Dave, obviously, because, he gave me that job, and I'm really grateful to him for having so much faith in me and for always hiring me and letting me have so much fun in my life. But also just everybody that worked there, the Late Show band. I mean, everybody was just wonderful. Paul, like you had Felicia and Will, and like Alan Coulter, God bless him, he's no longer with us. Tony
I got
Mendez,
a note here to talk about him. We just didn't even. I mean, so much.
Tony Mendez, he's unfortunately passed away too. Stephen Kaufman, who was a background guy who couldn't have been nicer.
And Michelle, you talk about Michelle, right? As well. She no longer with us as well.
She passed away too.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, and Sue Hunt, I mean, Maria Pope, Jill Letterman. Oh my God. Not Letterman, Lederman, sorry.
Jill Lederman,
she was incredible too. So
I'm trying hard to get Jill on this show.
She's, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. You have to try, because she's incredible. And she's just a ball of joy. That Jill she's like Wonder Woman, that lady. I mean, talk about, she could handle anything. I mean, like, she would just be like, like, oh my God, she's running here doing this, all these last minute. I don't know how that woman managed to hold it all together the way she did, But that's one thing I have to say that was very ahead of his time for David Letterman, is that, the show was pretty balanced with men and women. So there was a lot of, like, people in positions of power. It wasn't just all male dominated, it was equal. It was pretty equal. Dave he had a lot of brilliant, smart, wonderful women that he liked to surround himself with, and men, so both, though, he had both sexes well represented on the show. And I think that also was, very forward, certainly thinking of him. And he just had so many strong women around him, it was awesome. Like, wow, she's like, yeah, she's amazing, that lady. It's just like, you're just like in awe, a little bit, like a little scary. Like they're so smart and like so incredible, and and again, that devotion to Dave, that just permeated all aspects of the show, and it was great.
Very, 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 very well said. Gosh, I just appreciate your heart. I appreciate the depth and soulful thought that you have, and the way you articulate yourself is just so delightful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you
Don
very
sent me
much.
this, and I'm
Thank you,
just like,
Megan.
oh, look at this right here.
Oh my God, that's my son and Dave. That's after I left. That was just before, like, I think I had left maybe, I think Winston was like maybe 2 in that shot. And you know what's funny? And Dave was such a cool guy. So my son, because, he was 2. And he liked Dave, but, Dave was like a stranger to him type of thing. And, it's weird. We're in the late show. We had already gone and seen everybody. We went around backstage and, I said hi to everyone. So I was all over the place with my kid. And Dave then was like, everyone was like, okay, wait for Dave, he's going to come. He wants to see you. And, and I was going to meet him in the green room, which that picture was taken at. I was like, oh my God, I can't wait. He really wants to see Winston and whatever. So we waited and like we were running around. So Dave finally is able to come at the end of the taping. My son's a little tired, it was a lot for him. It was kind of overwhelming, so he's overstimulated.
Yep.
So he did the same thing to Santa Claus. So we go and we're in the green room and Dave's like, oh, Winston, so my son was cool with him. He's talking to him. And then Dave says, well, get a picture. Let's get a picture of, the 3 of us. I was like, oh, that'd be great. So I go and he was trying to get my son to sit on him, like my son did the same thing to Santa. He could not have it. He was going all stiff. He was doing all stuff. Like he was not gonna. I was like, Winston, please, mommy just wants a picture, sweetie, with Dave. Please just take. And David was laughing so hard. We were laughing. We were in hysterics. And finally, my son stood still enough without going all stiff in his body, and we were able to snap a very quick picture of Dave, myself, and Winston, my son. But it was hilarious. And Dave was just like, he was so cool about it, he was just like, Harry's the same, don't worry, so like he was really, really, really sweet. But so I had obviously left the show by then, but I would still always come back and visit. And but can you imagine how cool Dave is, right?
And now he's got a Santa beard.
How could you have anybody cooler? He's just the coolest person on planet Earth. Not only a legend and an icon and a genius and smart and fabulous, but he happens to be like the coolest person ever. So I can't think. He's just awesome. He's just awesome. And I had a chance to be working for that was my boss. Yeah. I can't believe that. How lucky was I? So I'm just and also all the other people that worked with them. They were all really cool too. So and then I got to meet like some of the most famous people in the world that were also really down to earth and nice, like David Bowie. I got all the musical guests, as you know, were phenomenal on the show. Got to meet all of them. Every time someone would win, like the football, like NFL or, the NHL, the Stanley Cup, they would always come, the winning team. So I got to meet everybody there, and people who would write like incredible books, or politicians. Hillary Clinton came. She is brilliant, by the way. Like, what an intelligent woman. Wow. And like Johnny Depp. I mean, like everybody that I thought was incredible came on the show, and I got to meet all these people. I don't have any photos because, as we said, in those days you just didn't do that, but I have it. I have the photos, better than photos. I have the
which is why this show
experience.
Exists, because that's exactly why this show exists, is you can talk about that. And you met all these cool people, but at the same time, your boss was cooler than every single one of them. Exactly. Yeah, he was awesome. So yeah, it was a very special time.
And I'm just so lucky that I was part of that, because I don't think that can be recreated again today. It's changed too much, the culture.
No.
With everybody with a phone, everybody knows everything about everybody. Before you went on a talk show as a celebrity because your whole life wasn't constantly on display. You didn't have an Instagram account. There was something sacred about being able to hear a celebrity talk and interact with someone and hear something about their life, right? Because you didn't have this direct exchange. Like, I think somehow it made it a little more sacred
For
before,
sure. I could not
because
agree more.
well, it wasn't typical, it was special. You turned into that show to see Dave so that you could watch X celebrity person and understand something about them outside of the roles that they played. And I think today, you no longer need to do that, right? They're constantly sharing and posting, and you see
Yeah.
their house, you see their kids, you see them with no makeup on, you see them looking great, looking bad, look at what
Yeah.
they eat for dinner, or I think it's dissipated so much, like
Well, vulnerable
it's
is the new black. There's no question.
yeah, yeah.
Vulnerability is like, even when I don't know if you saw this or not, but fairly recently Dave was on Neil Brennan's podcast called Blocks, and
I haven't seen that.
and it was a really good interview. I highly recommend it, because Neil Brennan, who is he was Dave Chappelle's writing partner, arguably one of the most prolific, if not stand-ups, then certainly writers out there right now, and he was talking to Dave about that, how vulnerability now is a big part of stand-up and a big part of celebrity, like you're saying. But it wasn't like that back then. And this is
No.
I love that you and I got into that. That's the unexpected gifts of these shows, Nadine, it floors me. I didn't think that you and I would get into this today. But the idea, though, that you saw an evolution, like you have seen an incredible evolution too, especially when you consider your background with fashion and everything to do now. Oh yeah, you know what? We never did finish up. If we are going to finish the show, I want to finish talking about what you're doing now. How can people see what you're doing now? And what are you doing now? Tell people about the artist that you are in 2023.
Well, thank you. 2023. Yeah, so I have a website, NadineHennelly.ca, and I work in mostly photo-based art, a lot of abstractions, but I'm slowly now starting to get back into sculpture, which is something I did a long time ago when I used to live in New York, and I shifted gears when I moved here because I had my kid and whatever. So I'm starting to make inroads back into that a little bit as well. And in the last couple of years, I bought a place in the countryside here in the townships, eastern townships. And I find that, because I live in downtown Montreal, but with COVID and everything else, I started to spend an enormous amount of time in the countryside. And I have to say, that's really had a huge impact on me. I love nature. I love, so eventually, now for the next short term, my son is still in school. So I'm going to stay between there and the city, but eventually I want to move full time, make a shift to the country. I just love being in the country. There's nothing better, I think, like being in nature, surrounded by forests and the lake, and there's deer everywhere.
Yeah,
and
Quebec
it's just
is beautiful.
So beautiful. Oh my God, it's just incredible. Well, you're in Vancouver, so you can't top that. But like wow.
Kelowna is very beautiful too. I'm very fortunate to be from Kelowna. There's no question.
Oh, Kelowna, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. No, sorry. But so yeah, but that whole side, Western Canada, the West Coast is just incredible. It's just so beautiful there. Banff, and it just breathtaking.
Yes.
So we're lucky as Canadians. We have
We
a
are.
really, really beautiful country in that regard. So yeah, so I'm starting to do more of that and experimenting. I want to shift a little bit, you know, and do things like that are more tactile. You know, I think that the more time I spend in nature, the more I want to be like, photography is great, don't get me wrong, but you know, you're always one step removed with photography. And I think in an urban environment, that works very well because you kind of have to be one step removed, right? Like
Yep.
that's the city experience type of thing. But when you start to spend a lot more time in nature, you start to have this different relationship with your environment and the world, and you know, it's more hands-on and more tactile. So I want to start reincorporating. So I'm moving more towards sculpture. It's just that now I've been in the process of renovating my house in the country, so you know, trying to get that done during COVID was like just like almost the impossible dream. But luckily, things have started to normalize, you know, and I've finally found a contractor now who can help me finish my renovations in the country. And once that's done, then, you know, I really want to go full steam ahead with this new direction with my work. So I'm really excited about that, because now I create these like abstractions in acrylic and on aluminum, and you know, I make these panels and stuff. It's cool. I really like that too, you know. But I feel like I want to have more contact. I want it to be more personal, my work. So I want to, and I feel that sculpture is so hands-on. You know, you're directly, you know, having a physical relationship with the work that you're creating.
Yep.
So I want to, because I mean, I create things digitally in photography. Like I take components and reassemble them, but it's all done on computer, so it's different. I mean, you're still doing things, but it's a visual experience, you know?
Yes.
Whereas sculpture, it's visual and it's also tactile, you know, it's very hands-on, and you know, you get into the work in a different way. So I'm moving towards that.
And
thank you for
subconscious, subconscious as well, because you're taking a part of yourself and you're putting it out there into what you're sculpting as well. So it's so personal as well, which is just
for sure.
I love this. I could do this all day. I'm gonna stop it now, and we're gonna just save the rest for part 2 when we do part 2 coming on here. This is amazing. So stick around here. You're just gonna see me do a quick outro, and then we'll say our goodbye privately and say goodbye with Don, if that's okay with you. So
That's
second
perfect.
here, Nadine, you are incredible. Thank you so much for taking your
Oh
time.
my God, thank you. It's my pleasure. I mean, I can't even tell you.
I'm so talk about grateful. I don't know how many times on this show that I've talked about how grateful I am that I get to be the one that hosts this thing, but I love it.
And you're
so
doing
much.
fantastic, by the way.
What's that?
Excellent. I said you're doing fantastic, by the way. You're doing an excellent job. So you should feel just completely proud of yourself, because it just, yeah, but you're easy to talk to. And I think that you've hit the right nerve, or you know, like you have the right exchange. It's very easy to talk to you, and I just felt like this entire time, like I just wanted to open up to you, like you were my best friend. I almost felt like I've known you my whole life, even though that's completely, I've never met you before. Like today is the first time I ever even talked to you, but I just feel like you have that, you know, that gift that as people who have to interview people and get things out of them, it just comes naturally to you. So, you know, what a pleasure. It's just so easy. It's so easy to talk to you, and you know, you're wonderful. You're just easy, and you have a good energy, you know, so you spread like a good vibe, and it goes back and forth, and it never felt like, I never felt like, oh my God, I'm so uncomfortable, or oh my God, what am I gonna say? Or, like it was just like, I was vibing the whole time, and it just felt easy, and it just felt natural. And that's really, not everybody has that. So congratulations to you. So you have a gift, and it's really nice that you're exploring it and that you found the perfect vehicle for it. So good for you.
Holy cow. One of the High Hopes babes just said she feels like my best friend. I love it.
It's true.
Holy
I feel like
I feel exactly the same. I feel a connection too. I put a post up the other day on my social media talking about how I think that relationships, I think, are the silver bullet to everything. And being a podcast host, you form these bonds with people that it's a special relationship. And it certainly is two-way. Oh my gosh. You too, Don. I feel the same way, buddy. He's going to love that, by the way. He's a real touchy-feely guy, that Don Giller.
Yeah, he's a wonderful person.
He sure is. And I'm really grateful for him. And he loves the compliments. Oh my gosh, does he love the compliments?
Well, you know what, too? It's nice that he can support you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like,
oh my God, are you kidding me?
You couldn't ask for anybody better. I have to say, right? That guy, Don, knows everything, and he's just such a generous spirit and such a giving, kind person, right? He's so nice, and he's so like down to earth. And if he can help, he'll help in any way that he can. He'll run 100 miles for you, So you got blessed by being able to fall into Don and have Don be able to help you in life, because he's the expert. I mean, earlier we were talking about experts on the show.
Yep.
Don is the absolute expert of the Late Show. Everything David Letterman, there is no one that you could go to that would know more from beginning to end and everything in between than Don.
Absolutely.
He is the hands down 100% expert of the Late Show with David Letterman. I can't think of anyone that would know more than Don, ever.
There isn't.
So you're lucky that he's helping you. I mean, I think how lucky you are.
You're preaching to the choir. I am so from the first episode that he started helping me with to now he appears on camera from time to time, and when I just so grateful for him, and I'm so grateful for you, because the idea that it's so easy to look at the veneer of what you see on the screen, and it's like, oh my goodness, the beautiful women, will it float, all of that stuff, and here's the tray of meat, and I mean, you giving out all these things, but to talk to the soul in behind that beauty and the veneer of show business. You have such a beautiful soul, and I just am so grateful.
Thank you.
And of course you're Canadian. Oh, and of course you're Canadian, right? I mean, and you know what?
No.
So, no offense to Paul, but I'm glad Nadine was my first Canadian. I'm glad. That seems right to me.
Well, and Paul, you gotta get Paul on, as I said, because you're gonna love him. He's so wonderful. We did something that's one thing that Andrea and I were so upset, because they were doing. Remember when Paul was doing the cape?
Yes.
They did the cape with Paul?
I have that on the card here. Yes.
Oh
yes.
my God!
You guys put the cape on Paul.
So we were, So and Andrea and I were like, like they're doing the cape with everybody. Everybody's coming on and doing the cape with Paul, and we love Paul, right? And we were like, how come nobody's saying about us? What? And we just didn't say anything. And then when they finally said to us, "Okay, you guys are gonna do the cape with Paul," we were like, yes, you guys. We're like, oh my God, we're so happy. That made her and I so happy.
Oh.
We're so glad to do because we love Paul, and for us, that was like a way, like almost like crowning him, instead of a crown, he got a cape, because he's such a sweetheart, and he was just he's a musical mastermind, and to be able to be, to go to him, and that was, to us, that was like crowning him, because that cape, and that we got selected and we were able to do it, we were so happy. Her and I, we lived off that one for like a month. We were so happy, because but I mean, Paul, he's like the underdog. Like he's just he's just great. I don't think anyone could ever say anything but the most wonderful things about Paul.
Absolutely. And they have, and I can't wait. We're trying. Will is trying to get him on, and Felicia's trying to get him to come on here. And I think it's just a matter of logistics to make it happen. I think we're going to get Paul. I'm very excited about that. But again, I'm very glad that you were my first Canadian, Nadine. You are an absolute treasure. And I just appreciate you so much. I'm going to end it now, and then we'll say our goodbye. That's another episode of the Letterman Podcast. Boy, oh boy. Is it a lot of fun?
It was such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you to Rupert also, and to Don, because he gave you all those great pictures and helped me to remember different things. So I can't thank you enough. I had such a great time being here. And it was so nice of you to ask me. So thank you. I'm very touched. And I hope that I didn't talk for too long. And I hope that maybe for people who are fans of the show, I hope that I was able to give them a little bit of an idea or an understanding or taste of what it was like to be part of that history making television show, because it was just a different era, and it was just extraordinary life experience. So thank you so much for allowing me to voice how much fun I had, and to remind me of so many things that I had forgotten about the show that I did, and that just made me so happy, so it's just nice to think about everyone again, and to in my mind to time travel back to that time, and to think of Dave, and and see that he's happy now, and just it's just really nice. So what a wonderful way for me to spend a couple of I don't know how long it's been now, like a couple hours or but so I can't thank you enough for that, Mike. I really had a wonderful time. Thank you so much. It was just a joy and a pleasure.
I couldn't agree more. And you did, by the way, you did exactly what you just said you hoped that you did, to give people an idea as to what was happening behind the scenes, that kind of a thing. You certainly did that. Don has sent us this last picture. There's the cape right there. There's the day of the cape.
Oh, that's right. Oh, I want a picture of that.
I'm sending everything that Don sent me here. I'm going to send it to you right now.
Because unfortunately I don't have, because in those days you had to put a VCR. Yep. And I was young, I was doing a lot of stuff, so I never recorded any of my appearances. So I have like a couple that like different people sent me over the years, but I have like the Dave and Steve's Gay Vacation. I have that. I have the one with the Academy Awards, but like I don't have that many, so I really appreciate any kind of pictures or any of that stuff. Like, who would have known, when you're doing it, you don't think, and you're young, you're not thinking, oh, I should record this, because I'm gonna want it when I'm older, and I'm gonna want to show my kid or whatever. I didn't even know I'd have a kid, so I just wasn't thinking. I didn't realize, I guess, it was just my job, So
and this is exactly why you're better at this than I am. Stephen Dave's Gay Vacation is on here. So too is the Chocolate Academy Awards. And you just banged off another couple moments that we didn't even get to, just right off. Like, I love it. I love it. There's so many moments. And of the 400 and some odd appearances that you had, I mean, we got lots of things that we can talk about in the future. I'm going to end it now. That's another episode of the Letterman Podcast with Mike Chisholm.
Thank you.
Coincidentally, I am Mike Chisholm. She is Nadine Hennelly. Thank you and good night.
Overcoat and underpants.